Welcome back, all my fight fans. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys my predictions for UFC 311 in Inglewood, United States, in the... Oh, I almost read Inuit Dome. That's not it. In the Intuit Dome? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's that new stadium that I think the... I don't know. Is it the Lakers that play in that stadium or the Clippers? Somebody will let me know in the comments, but... I'm excited to see it. I like that there's that huge screen that kind of goes around, similar to the LA Rams stadium. It's going to be interesting to see. This, of course, on January 18th. It's going to be a hell of a card, man. This is a good one. They made us a really, really good card to kick off the year. I can't wait to break all this down for you guys. I'm going to spend more time on those main two fights, the main event and the co-main event, because I am huge fans of two of the fighters in those fights, and you guys probably already know who it is. I'm a huge Dagestani fan, so I'll be breaking down those fights in more detail. I'm going to go through the early prelims and the prelims a little bit quicker for you guys. So kicking us off with the first fight of the night, we have a Dagestani fighter. Awesome. Love to start out the night that way. The number 11th ranked flyweight, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Clayton Carpenter. And no surprise there, the Russian is the favorite. If there's ever a fight where the Russian isn't the favorite, I will be surprised. They seem to all be undefeated. This guy is not, however. Tagir has a couple losses on his record. He's 16-2. He has 7 wins by submission, 1 win by knockout, and 4 first-round finishes. So I'm going to take this guy maybe by decision, maybe by submission. I'm not too certain yet. I have to look a little bit more into Clayton Carpenter. I'm not the most familiar on him, but I know I'm taking Tagir to win this. So for now, I'm going to take him by decision. Next up, we have a bantamweight bout between Ricky Turcios and Benardo Sopaj from Albania. And this guy is a minus 300 favorite. He is 11-3 with 7 wins by knockout, 7 first-round finishes, and 7 wins by submission. So I'm going to take that guy to win. He seems like the favorite for a reason. From the few clips that I've seen from him, he seems like a pretty aggressive bantamweight. So I'm going to take that guy to win. I'm going to go by knockout in the 3rd round. Why not? It's hard to pick these early prelims fights, so it's kind of just a shot in the dark. But next up, we have another bantamweight fight between Rinya, Nakamura, and Muin Gafurov from Tajikistan. And I'm going to take the Japanese kid in this one. He is 9-0. He has 5 wins by knockout, 1 win by submission, and 5 wins in the first round. So he is a minus 395 favorite, basically a minus 400 favorite. And he's looking like an up-and-coming star at 135. There are so many Japanese fighters breaking into the sport right now. Kai Asakura aside, we all know how good that guy is. I mean, maybe not all of us, because he did just get beaten in the 2nd round by Pantoja, but that guy is a former champion. He's an excellent fighter. He has flying knees that are outstanding. I mean, some of those knees he threw even in the Pantoja fight, I'm like, how was Pantoja not going out? But yeah, Asakura is very fun. Taira is very fun. Ray is very fun. 125 has a bunch of fun Japanese fighters right now, and bantamweight does as well in Nakamura. So I'm going to take him to win. By method, I'm going to go with decision. Usually those Middle Eastern fighters are pretty tough, and I haven't watched a ton on Gafurov, but Middle Eastern fighters are tough enough. I think he's going to pull this one to a decision, but we'll see. I'm excited for that one for sure. Then we have a women's bantamweight fight between the number 9 ranked Carol Rosa and the number 13 ranked, everybody's favorite, Ailin Perez. This is kind of a coin toss fight. I would probably have to pick Rosa. She's a little bit higher in the rankings, and her wins are slightly more impressive, but not by much. It's a bit of a coin toss fight. I'm going to pick Perez to win this by decision, just because I want her to win. I want to see... well, you guys know what we all want to see. So moving on to the lightweight bout, we have the number 15th ranked Grant Dawson versus Diego Ferreira. And I am definitely going to take Grant Dawson in this one. I think this is a fight for him to win. It's going to be a really fun one. This is actually a great fight to kind of headline the early prelims. This fight is one of those fights where I look at and I'm like, damn, the matchmakers, they know what they're doing on this one. This is going to be a war, I'm predicting. Grant Dawson is 22-2-1. He has 13 wins by submission, 5 by knockout, 7 in the first round. I'm pretty sure he's going to get this one done, possibly by submission, but I think it's going to go to decision, and I think it's going to be one of the better fights of the night. Moving on to the prelims. We have a middleweight bout between Zachary Reese, who is facing Securities Dumas. And Dumas, man, this guy looks like he is one of those SoundCloud rappers. It's always hard for me to believe that this guy's actually in the UFC. He looks like, who was that rapper? YNN Melly, that one who went to jail a few years ago after he wrote the song Murder on My Mind, and then it turned out he actually did murder somebody. This guy kind of looks like that guy, but he is 10-2, 4 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 4 in the first round. The odds aren't released on this fight yet, but I am going to take Zachary Reese in this one. He seems to have a little bit more power in his hands. That's why I'm going to take him. This fight is probably a kind of a coin toss fight. They're very, very similar in experience. Zachary Reese is 8-1, 5 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 7 in the first round. So he's obviously a prevalent first round finisher. So I'm going to take him by first round knockout over Dumas or YNN Melly. Then we have a heavyweight bout between the number 6 and number 7th ranked Jailton Almeida and Serghei Spivac. Now, this is a great fight. This is a good fight for Spivac because if he gets this win, it kind of puts him into the top 5, and maybe he can get another run at maybe like a top fight, maybe a title fight. Who knows? I'm not really expecting that from Spivac. I'm going to take this fight by submission for Almeida. He seems to be one of the most dominant fighters right now at heavyweight coming up. And he's 21-3, 7 wins by knockout, 13 by submission, 15 first round finishes, which is a lot. He's coming off of a win over Romanov by submission, which is kind of why I think he's probably going to be able to submit Spivac as well. I think Romanov is a better grappler than Spivac. And he had that hiccup against Curtis Blades where he got knocked out in the second round, but he came very close to finishing Blades in the first. So Almeida's one of those guys where even though he has a couple losses, he almost feels like an undefeated fighter. He has that kind of aura to him, I guess, having that many first round stoppages. So I'm going to take Jailton Almeida by first round submission in this one. Then we have a bantamweight bout between Payton Talbott and Raoni Barcelos. And this fight might be shorter than it just took me to pronounce that guy's name. I am taking Payton Talbott 100% by first round knockout. He's a minus 1100 favorite. If you guys know anything about this Payton Talbott kid, he is a fighter to watch. He's on a 9-fight winning streak, which is just another way of saying he's 9-0, I guess. 7 wins by knockout, 1 win by submission. And yeah, this guy, 56% striking accuracy, significant strikes landed per minute, 8.3, which is ridiculous. This guy's got so much power in his hands, and he seems to be just knocking out everybody. His last fight lasted 19 seconds. The fight before that lasted... Or no, that went to the second round. That was 21 seconds in the first round. Sorry. I thought it was 2 20-second fights in a row. But regardless, Payton Talbott is a menace, and he's a kid that you need to watch. I believe he's like 24, 25. He's also very young, and he's going to be one of those guys that's going to light up the bantamweight division when he gets into the top 15. So I'm definitely taking him by knockout in the first round. I don't see it going any other way. Obviously, I could be wrong, but the odds on this fight aren't great to bet on. But if you were to bet on a fight to be kind of absolute, I would say Payton Talbott by first round knockout is a pretty solid lock. And then we have a light heavyweight bout, which kind of headlines the prelims here. We have the number 10 ranked Johnny Walker versus the number 13th ranked Bogdan Guskov, who is a slight favorite in this fight. He's 16-3. He has 12 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 12 coming in the first round. He's from Uzbekistan, I believe. And we need to see some more Uzbekistani fighters in the UFC. For those of you who don't know, the recent Olympics, I believe there are... I could be wrong. On this, and I might be remembering things, but I believe in the recent Olympics, there were 10 weight classes for male boxing. And I believe 5 or maybe it was 8. I think there was 8 weight classes for boxing, and I think 5 of those gold medals went to Uzbekistani fighters. Blew my mind. I did not see that coming. I always think it's going to be Russia, Ukraine, the US. Those are the countries that you usually expect to be in the kind of upper echelon for amateur boxing. However, in the recent years, Uzbekistan has dominated amateur boxing. They have a Soviet style that's almost unique to their country, and they've been dominating boxing. So it's really, really cool. You don't really see it as much in the professional scene. So for those of you guys who only follow professional boxing, you might not be aware of this, but in amateur boxing, Uzbekistan is dominating right now. So I want to see more and more Uzbekistani fighters come to the UFC because they seem to be doing something right now. So Guskov is one of those fighters from Uzbekistan that I'm excited to see what he does at light heavyweight. And because it's Johnny Walker, he either knocks you out in the first round or gets knocked out in the first round. I'm going to take Guskov by first round knockout over Johnny Walker. I don't trust Johnny Walker anymore. When he first came into the UFC, I'm sure some of you guys remember this. We were like, man, this guy could beat John Jones. Like, this guy is tall, talented, powerful, dynamic, creative. This guy might be John Jones's kryptonite. And then it turns out that he just gets knocked out in the first round relentlessly. It's been like 3 or 4 times now that he's been knocked out in the first round. So moving on to the main card. Kicking off our main card, we have a fantastic bout between Kevin Holland and Reinier de Ridder. Now, some of you guys may have seen de Ridder's debut against Mershard. That was an awesome fight. I highly recommend going back and watching that to see the level of jiu-jitsu that this guy possesses. There are 2 ways that this fight can go down. A knockout for Kevin Holland or a submission for de Ridder. That's the only way I see this fight going. I honestly don't see it going to decision because I think both guys are so good at what they do. That's the only way the fights can go. Now, you guys might be saying, Kevin Holland's a black belt. He's really good on the ground. No. Not compared to de Ridder, he's not. De Ridder is 18-2. He has 4 wins by knockout, 12 by submission, 10 in the first round. So you do the math there. The majority of those first round submissions first round finishes are by submission, which is crazy. To be finishing guys in the first round by submission is wild. Now, you might be wondering, well, he's not undefeated or anything. He's not 18-0. So, he's beatable, right? The 2 losses that he has were to the 1FC triple champion in Anatoly Malikin, who just got his first loss of his career recently in a fight against Rug, which I thought he won the fight. I thought it was a split decision win for Anatoly, but the judges called it for Rug. That fight will get ran back, but that was at heavyweight. 2 enormous heavyweights. Anatoly Malikin is not a small human being. He might be 5'11", but he's like a Fedor. Like, he's built, man. And he throws like Fedor, too. He's got so much power in his hands. But he became champion at heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. And it was at middleweight where he beat de Ridder twice. So that is where de Ridder's losses come from one of the greatest active MMA fighters on the planet, a triple champion. I know it's 1FC, and some people think, well, 1FC, their fighters aren't as good as the UFC. That's not true, okay? You go and you watch the UFC or 1FC, throw it on one Friday night. It's not even on the same night as UFC. You can watch it on a Friday night. It's on Amazon Prime. You don't have to buy a pay-per-view. And you guys will see that 1FC puts on the best MMA product in the world besides the UFC. They're second to them, and it's not by a huge gap. They put on a fantastic product. If you want to watch striking, if you want to watch kickboxing master classes and elite KOs, you better be watching 1FC because that's where a lot of them are happening. Some of the best striking fights of 2024 that I watched were from 1FC. So highly recommend watching 1FC. Like I said, if you have Amazon Prime, you have no excuse. It's on Prime for free. You don't have to pay for the pay-per-view like you do for UFC, which I'm sure lots of my viewers don't even pay for that pay-per-view. So moving on to light heavyweight. We have the number 2 ranked and the number 3 ranked, both Pereira's bitches, Jiri Prochazka and Jamal Hill. The battle of Pereira's bitches. So we'll see how that one plays out. I don't really care how this one plays out. I'm sure all of us are just rooting for Jiri because Jamal Hill is so damn annoying. That guy, man. I mean, a couple years ago, people liked him. Like, he was a fun boxer from Chicago. His only loss was really to Paul Craig, which was not fluky, but like the ref stopped the fight because his arm was broken. Jamal Hill didn't stop the fight. He kept on fighting, but his arm was literally flopping around. But besides that loss, which, Ankalaev has a loss to Paul Craig, so who really cares? Besides that loss, everybody was like, this guy's good. He's like knocking people out. He's knocking some really high-level guys out rather quick. He had that fight with Glover, which was amazing, and Hill was a likable guy. He was somebody who we were looking at as like a good fight for Pereira. And then he has the fight with Pereira. Weird moment a little bit, but you're in a fight. Like, don't use an excuse of the ref stopping the fight for a second for a nut shot that you threw that your opponent just didn't care about. And then, I don't know, he's been so annoying as of lately. I feel like every single person in the MMA community just dislikes Jamal Hill or just flat out hates him because he's so damn annoying right now. Then he calls out Alex Pereira, says, like, let's fight in the street and whack stuff like that. Like, I'm a street fighter, I'm a gangster, I'm from Chicago, whatever. Goes to the gym that Pereira's at. Pereira throws gloves at his feet and says, there's a cage right here, let's fight. And then Hill bitches out of that. So Hill over the last year has become the most unlikable fighter in the UFC, and there's nobody to blame but himself. He's done it with his own mouth. Like, he has no more fans. I mean, I'm sure some people still like him, but like, he's gotten rid of a lot of his fans. A lot of his fans don't like him anymore. And a lot of us like Jiri because Jiri's an awesome guy. He steps in on short notice. He fights anybody. He's been fighting for a long time. And he's still relatively young and in his prime. He's a very entertaining kickboxer. And I think he's just a more likable dude. Like, you hear him on the mic, a little bit cringe when he's talking about samurai mindset and stuff like that when you're a 6'4" white dude. But, he's a cool dude. I think we all like Jiri. So I'm picking Jiri to win by knockout in the first round. Will it happen? I don't know. There's part of my brain that's telling me, like, Jamal Hill's probably going to get this done by knockout, but I want Jiri, so I'm picking Jiri. First round knockout for Jiri. Moving on, we have a lightweight bout between the number 9 ranked and the number 10 ranked Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. Money Moicano! Now, Moicano is he's almost like Charles Oliveira 2.0 because I've been watching Charles Oliveira since he first debuted in the UFC, and I always remembered him as kind of a mediocre fighter. I almost compared him to the other Oliveira, to Alex Oliveira, because he would kind of drop fights. I mean, he's been stopped 8 times in the UFC. He's been finished 8 times. I believe it's 8 times. But, Charles Oliveira is not a guy who's, like, undefeated and dominating everybody and running through the brackets. Like, he was kind of an up-and-down fighter. And then he had this resurgence just a couple years ago where he went on a big winning streak and he got to the belt and he won the belt. And he obviously lost it to Islam. But he's one of those fighters that had that, spotty career. Brazilian also, so is Moicano. Spotty career and then had this rise. And Moicano's having the same thing right now. Kind of a spotty career, win some, lose some. Maybe lose some fights that maybe you should have won, and maybe win some fights maybe you should have lost. But now he's at a point where he's on a roll. He just beat a top contender in Benoit Saint-Denis, a guy who I was looking at as maybe somebody who could beat Islam, maybe somebody who could be the next champ. I was really high on BDS for a while there. Still, he's still pretty young. He's only like 27, and, he had staph while he had that fight with Moicano, so I always like to factor that stuff in. When you have a serious injury like that or a serious infection, that does factor in, so we'll see how BDS bounces back. But Moicano is one of those guys who's just kind of on a roll. He's 20-5, 25-1, 10 wins by submission, 4 first-round finishes. However, I have to go with Beneil, man. I have to go with Beneil. Beneil is 22-6, 5 wins by knockout, 8 by submission, 8 in the first round. And, he lost to Arman Tsarukyan, which great performance by Arman. And he lost to Charles Oliveira. But before that, I mean, he was beating guys like Gamrot. He beat Tony Ferguson. He beat Ferreira. He beat Holtzman. I know those last two aren't really the biggest names, but, he beat Drew Dober. I love Drew Dober. He beat Moises. Like, he beat a lot of good guys. Hernandez won by KO over Dariush quite a while ago. That was when Hernandez was on the up. He was up and coming, and he was looking like a hot prospect. But Dariush, man, he's one of those guys he's a very, very solid fighter, and he's got power in his hands, and he's kind of always been in that top 10. So, I don't know. I feel like Dariush has to bounce back. If he gets 3 losses in a row, especially if it's by finish, you might be looking at your way out of the UFC. I know he's so good that, like, you can't exactly say that, but usually when guys lose 3 fights in a row, and usually when they're all by a method of KO or submission, usually the UFC starts to look at letting those guys go. So I'm really hoping for Beneil to come back and get a win here. I like him a little bit more than Moicano, but not for like any solid reason. I've just kind of always, like I said, looked at Moicano as kind of a 50-50-ish fighter. Not that his record's 50-50. That's not what I mean. But like he drops some and wins some sort of thing. Doesn't really have like a solid like 10-fight winning streak throughout his career. But that's a weird one for me. It's kind of a toss-up fight. I'm really excited to see how it plays out because, again, I think the matchmakers killed it on this one. I think this is a great matchup, and it does a lot of things for the division. If Moicano wins, he's kind of solidified in that top 10 now. He can kind of get a top 5 fight, and we can see if he really is in that top 5 lightweights. I don't think he is personally. And then if Beneil wins, he kind of re-solidifies himself as a top 10 lightweight, which I still think he is, but I don't think he's a top 5 lightweight. I don't think either of these guys are, but we'll see. We'll see on the 18th whether or not that's true or not. Getting into the main fights, these are the ones that I want to talk about the most. So I'm going to take a little bit more time in breaking these ones down. So obviously the co-main event is the bantamweight title bout between Merab Dvalishvili and the number 2 ranked Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the antics between these two because that's been covered enough, and you guys can go watch the press conferences and see how unhinged Merab's been for yourself. But I think mentality-wise, this fight's already been won for Umar. I think Merab's kind of out of control. He seems frantic. He seems like he's already lost, and he seems a little bit scared to be going up against Umar, a guy who's probably a better wrestler than him. I don't think Merab's ever had to deal with that before. He's never had to deal with a guy who's like objectively a better wrestler than him. You can argue the Cejudo fight, but then you watch how he fought Cejudo and you didn't have too many problems with him. So Umar, on the other hand, a lot taller. He's 5'8". I think Cejudo's like 5'4". And Dagestani wrestling is much better than American wrestling. Like, much better. Much, much, much better. Dagestani wrestling is the best in the world by far. I don't care how good you are, if you're from Georgia, if you're from Iran, or even Japan with what they've been doing recently in wrestling. The best wrestling on the planet is from Dagestan 100%. They've produced over 20 gold medalists, and there's like 3 million people in the Republic of Dagestan. My country, Canada, we've got like 40 million people, and we have like 1 medalist ever in the Olympics for wrestling. I think like 2 in total, and the other one was a woman. Like, Dagestan's dominance in wrestling, again, I'm making a documentary on it right now, so eventually when that comes out, I'll have a full video to explain this to you guys, because I don't think people really realize how dominant this little area is in this sport. It's something that I've never seen before. Not in any martial art, not in any sport has a small little area of just a few million people produce this many world champions. Ridiculous. So I know that Umar isn't he's not really a wrestler at heart. He's more of a striker at heart. He kind of grew up doing Muay Thai first. That was his kind of first love. Him and Usman both. And then they kind of naturally got into the wrestling because when you grow up in Dagestan, you're going to wrestle. You don't have a choice. It's kind of a thing there where if you're at a family event or if you're with friends, you just wrestle. Like if you're having a Christmas dinner, like you're going to be wrestling your uncles and your cousins. at like next to the dinner table in Dagestan. That's just like a natural thing there. Whereas here, where I live, if I ask my cousins to wrestle, they're going to run away from me. They're going to bitch out. Like, there's no way I'm getting in a wrestling match with any of the male figures in my family. None of them want to do it with me because they know I'm going to mop them because they don't wrestle. But in Dagestan, everybody wrestles. So family members wrestle family members, and it's just a constant thing. It's like a community of wrestlers in Dagestan. So it's a completely different thing that you're dealing with here. And I think Merab's in over his head. I think the wrestling is going to surprise him from Umar. And I know that Khabib and Islam are going to be just grinding Umar through the dirt, making sure that his wrestling is on point, because I know that the Khabib camp already knows that Umar can outstrike Merab if it comes to that. Merab does not strike me as any sort of elite striker or dynamic kickboxer who can throw techniques quite like Umar can. Umar has a teep kick and a front kick that is like a jab. It's ridiculous how fast he gets it up. And he can throw that front kick up and hit you right in the solar plexus or hit you right in the chin like that. It's very quick. It's one of the best front kicks in the entire sport right now. He's got amazing jabs, amazing boxing. He can put combinations together. He's got leg kicks. I mean, he's just a better striker than anything we've ever seen out of Dagestan. Shara Bullet aside, that's kind of an anomaly. And we'll put Ankalaev aside too, because he's also a little bit different. But out of like the, Khabib, not really any striking, pretty lackluster, looks bad. You pull out some of Khabib's striking out of context, and it looks like he's never thrown a punch a day in his life. You look at Islam, definitely an improvement, but he doesn't throw kicks as fluidly. But you look at Usman and you look at Umar, they're very fluid with their kicks. They're very fluid with their punches. The kickboxing comes naturally to them, and they can also wrestle very, very well. Maybe not as well as Khabib, maybe not even as well as Islam, but they're right there with them. They're from Dagestan, like I just said. They're constantly wrestling. And they have so many world champions around them. They have multiple Olympic medalists in their gym at any given time. So I'm taking Umar, obviously, in this fight. I don't know if I'll take it by any sort of method. I think it's going to go to decision. I think Merab, you have to give him respect, man. Like, he is a machine. He's got probably the best cardio, maybe in the whole sport. Definitely in his division, he's got the best cardio. I mean, that guy just goes and goes and goes. And you watch the way he fought Sean O'Malley, and that's kind of what won him the fight, was his cardio and his relentless pressure. I don't think it's enough against somebody like Umar. I think Umar is going to reverse things. He's going to scramble with him. He's going to wrestle with him, and he's going to have things coming his way, especially those front kicks. That's going to keep Merab on the back foot. I don't think Merab's going to be on the front foot the whole night like he has been in previous fights. I think this is going to be a tough fight for him. That's why I'm picking Umar to win, but we have to give respect to Merab. He is a fantastic fighter. I don't want to just dump on him because he's kind of a loon outside of the cage. I don't want to just dump on him because he's kind of lost his mind with this Umar fight. You have to look at his skills and you have to respect it. I mean, a lot of his losses were very, very close split decisions, or he has the Ricky Simone fight where it was like a last-second submission, which you could argue that shouldn't have been called a submission, and he should have won that fight by decision. So there is an argument you could make. Obviously, you have to twist things a little bit, but there's an argument to be made that Merab is undefeated. So I know he's not undefeated. I know he has those 4 losses, but all 4 of those losses are a little controversial. So it's going to be an amazing fight. I can't wait to watch it go down. Right now, Umar is closing in as a minus 270 favorite. Probably should be a bigger gap than that, but it's because he hasn't fought in any big names. His only big name was Corey Sandhagen. He out-grappled Corey Sandhagen the whole fight. I mean, Corey Sandhagen put on the best takedown defense I've ever seen. He did everything perfectly. If I were to take a textbook out for you guys, or if I were to go to, Sadulayev, or if I were to go to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt like Rickson Gracie, and I were to sit them down with you guys and explain to you every single move in defending a takedown to its T, Corey Sandhagen did that. And that's so rare. That's so rare for him to follow perfect instruction to every single takedown. You could not have defended takedowns better than Corey Sandhagen did against Umar. It is literally the masterclass for defending takedowns. I've never seen anybody ever in a UFC fight defend takedowns better than Corey Sandhagen did in that fight. Merab is going to be able to defend takedowns at least as well, but it'll be different. He won't be defending takedowns to stop them. He'll be almost defending takedowns to engage his own wrestling, and in those exchanges, that's when he'll make mistakes. You know, Corey Sandhagen was trying to negate the wrestling and stop it. Merab's not going to do that. Merab has too much pride. He knows that he's going to be looked on badly if he just tries to keep Umar off of his legs. He's going to have to wrestle with Umar. He's going to have to show his country of Georgia that he's able to get a takedown. I don't think he's going to be able to, but he's going to have to wrestle with Umar, if that makes any sense. So besides that fight with Corey Sandhagen, Umar doesn't have any big names on his resume, and I know that's why a lot of people are kind of looking at him, especially Merab, like, how does this guy have the title shot? Does this guy really deserve it? He definitely does. If you watch the way that he beat up the tomato cans, I hate that term because everybody you fight in your first 5 to 10 fights is going to be a tomato can. You just do the math. Like, if there's a guy who's 30-0, that means that there has to be 30 guys who are 0-1. There are a lot of bad fighters out there. 99% of MMA fighters are trash and they have losing records. So just remember that. Like, remember the math. But the way that he handled his first few fights, I mean, he was dominating. And you watch the striking from Umar. It's beautiful. It's literally some of the best striking at 135. I don't know if there's a better striker at 135 than Umar. Like, he's seriously that good. Go back and watch his old fights. He's phenomenal. I'm going to stop there for now because I want to break down the main event now. But needless to say, I see Umar winning in just about every department. I see him out-wrestling Merab. If it comes down to jiu-jitsu, which it won't because both guys are wrestlers, I think Umar does have the advantage there too. When it comes to on the feet, Umar has the better boxing. Umar has the better kickboxing. Umar has just as much cardio, I think. We'll see on the night of the fight because obviously Merab is known as the cardio machine, but I think he has just as much cardio. I think he has just as much endurance. He has a chin. Like, he has everything he needs to beat Merab, and I think he's going to dethrone him on the 18th. So let's move on to that main event. And finally, in the main event, we have the 155-pound title on the line between Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan. This is their second fight, so please go watch the first one right after this video if you haven't seen it already. It's one of my favorite underrated fights of all time. I know it's getting talked a lot about now because the second fight's coming up, but it's one of my favorite underrated fights ever. It was on a fight night. I don't even know if it was on the main card. Arman Tsarukyan stepped in on short notice. I believe he was like 20 years old when he fought in that fight, and he put on a great performance against Islam Makhachev. Made it a close fight. I want to go over some of the statistics in the first fight for those of you maybe who haven't seen it or want a more in-depth look at it. A couple stats that stick out to me is the total significant strikes. So Islam Makhachev landed 47 out of 53, whereas Arman was able to land 60 out of 90. So Arman Tsarukyan actually landed more significant strikes in the fight. The control time was dominated by Islam. He had 6 minutes and 6 seconds of control time to Arman Tsarukyan's 1 minute and 47 seconds. And the takedowns were also skewered for Islam. He landed 4, whereas Arman only landed 1. Now, some interesting stats on the side of Arman, actually, is the landed by target. So Islam landed 50% to the head, 42% to the body, and 7% to the leg, whereas Arman landed 7% to the leg, same as Islam, but 53% to the body and 38% to the head. So he actually had more success going down low to the body. Now, that was a 3-round fight. If there is a 5th-round fight, there's more room for that to take effect. You have the championship round. So if Arman consistently goes to the body in the second fight, maybe that adds up more. Because usually when guys are going to the body, it's because they're trying to drain you of energy or they're trying to get you to drop your hands low so they can eventually go to the head. So I hope that's Arman's strategy again. Next is landed by position. So Islam was able to land 28% from distance, whereas Arman Tsarukyan was able to land 46% from distance, so almost double. He was able to land 53% from the clinch, whereas Islam was able to land 57% from the clinch, and Islam landed 14% of his strikes on the ground, whereas Arman landed 0% of his strikes on the ground. So I thought it was interesting that Arman was able to land better at a distance despite being 3 inches shorter It seems like Arman Tsarukyan is the better striker, and from what I've seen throughout his career, I'd have to go with that as well. You watch the axe kick that he threw against Charles Oliveira, and for a guy who's built like a juiced-up mule, to get his leg completely up like that, like he was doing the splits while standing, and to drop that on Charles Oliveira's head, who is also 3 inches taller than Arman, was quite impressive. So Arman Tsarukyan, I would give the advantage to when it comes to striking. And if he can implement that in the second fight, I think his way to win is by knockout. I think he has enough precision, enough power, and hopefully enough confidence to go in there with some heat and land something on Islam's chin, because I think that's his best method to win. For Islam, I think his best method to win is to do what he does to everybody, to beat them up on the ground, on the feet, and to eventually find a submission. I think it'll be a late submission, probably 4th or 5th round, similar to the Dustin Poirier fight. You're going to have to drain Arman. He's an explosive wrestler, especially in the first couple rounds. It's going to be hard to keep him down. He's able to wrestle with Khamzat Chimaev. I just watched a quick little clip on Instagram, so I didn't watch the whole video, but he was able to wrestle with Chimaev, even though Chimaev was manhandling him, but who does he not manhandle? It was interesting to me to see that Arman was even willing to wrestle with that guy. So Arman is absolutely fearless, and I expect him to be quite a force in the first couple rounds. I expect this to be a very close fight. And actually, if I were to call this fight, I would actually call it by decision for Islam Makhachev, just because he seems a little bit more prime. He's 33 years old. Arman's 28, so they're both in their prime. But Islam, he's got a little bit of that. He's got a little bit more man strength on him. You know, you get that man strength with age. When you get old enough, you start calling it dad strength. But Islam's got a little bit of that. You've seen the way his back has grown in the last few years. It looks like a bag of pythons. He's absolutely a menace with his strength and conditioning training that he's been doing recently. I mean, I've seen him lifting and squatting, and the dude's an animal. So I'm sure that he's going to be stronger than Arman throughout the fight, although it will be close. Arman is no slouch himself. That guy is built too. Like I said, he's built like a juiced up mule. And I think it's going to be a close fight. I love both guys. Like, I obviously am a huge fan of the Dagestanis. They are my favorite fighters by far. So there's something special about the Dagestani athletes, and I've really been a fan of them the whole time they've been coming up. You know, Khabib I was a big fan of when he first got into the UFC, and then Islam comes along, and I'm a big fan of him. And I remember when Khabib fought Conor the first time, and the odds were kind of close, and I was telling everybody, like, bet your house on Khabib. Bet the mortgage. Bet everything on Khabib, man. Like, he's got this in the bag. I knew about this dominance in wrestling that they had and how unstoppable it would be. And it's going to be unstoppable for a long time, I think. I think they just train differently. Again, I'll highlight this all in my documentary, but Umar and Islam are some of my favorite fighters today because of the work they put in and because of where they're from. I rep the Dagestanis hard. They're so fantastic. And when you truly understand grappling, when you understand wrestling, when you understand the intricacies of fighting, you become big fans of these guys because you see the work that they put in and you see the amazing fights they put on. Some people might find some of the Khabib fights boring, but you cannot tell me any of the Islam fights have been boring, especially on his title run. He is a very entertaining fighter, and just wait, because Umar and Usman are even more entertaining. They're way better kickboxers than Islam and Khabib are, so it's going to be fun to watch them come up and dominate the sport. I'm excited for it. Usman is only 26 years old. Umar's 28, so we still got like 6 to 8 years of their dominance. Usman's not even in the UFC yet. Eventually, when he comes over, he'll be the lightweight champ, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm big fans of those guys. And I'm a big fan of Arman Tsarukyan, too. He's a really chill guy. He seems really humble and nice off the mic. And he's a former hockey player. And I played 15 plus years of hockey, so there's a little bit of a connection there with the former hockey guys. So I'm a big fan of all of the guys in the main 2 events besides Merab. I really like Merab's wrestling, and I like the way he fights, but outside of the cage, on the mic, he rubs me the wrong way. He's a little bit of a loon. He's a little bit insecure, it looks like. So I really don't like fighters that, like, exude that insecurity. Sean Strickland's another one who just, like, the insecurity screams from him, and I don't like it. So I like guys who stay humble, who stay quiet and who let their fighting do the talking for them. So I'm a big fan of Arman. I'm a big fan of Umar. I'm a big fan of Islam, and I can't wait to see what all of them do on January 18th. It's going to be sad if Arman does lose, but hey, man, he's going to go out there and he's going to put on a hell of a fight. I know it. That guy has got so much heart. Even if he loses, I think he'll be lightweight champ someday. He's only 28, so yeah, I'm super, super excited for these fights. I could talk about them all day, but I want to wrap up the video for today. So don't forget to let me know your guys' predictions down below in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. I know a lot of you guys will probably disagree with my picks, so let me know how I'm wrong down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. It helps boost this channel and the algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.